The Marine captain shouted across the auditorium, puffing his chest, bragging loudly that he was Special Forces as he marched toward the quiet woman standing alone near the stage. He jabbed a finger at her, mocking her stance, her silence, her lack of insignia. Then in front of 400 Marines, he swung at her, full speed, full ego. She didn't flinch. She caught his wrist midair and broke it with a single controlled movement that echoed through the hall. If you believe respect is earned by action, type honor below. The auditorium was packed. 400 Marines gathered for a joint training briefing at Camp Pendleton on a Tuesday morning in late September. The morning sun filtered through high rectangular windows, casting long geometric shadows across rows of standard-issue folding chairs arranged in perfect military precision. She stood alone at the side wall, wearing plain tactical clothes, black cargo pants with reinforced knees, a gray compression shirt, no rank insignia, no unit patches, no name tape, no introduction whatsoever. Most Marines assumed she was logistics or admin support. Quiet, unassuming, leaning casually against the wall with her arms loosely crossed, eyes half closed like she was half asleep or bored. When she walked slowly to check the projector cables near the stage, threading through the maze of wires carefully, a young Marine whispered to his buddy sitting beside him, "New tech staff?" His friend shrugged indifferently. "Maybe IT contractor from off base. Looks too fit for IT. Maybe physical therapy staff then." No one paid her serious attention until the Marine captain entered through the double doors at the back. Captain Marcus Trent. 6'2", barrel-chested, with a parade ground voice. He was known throughout the entire battalion for an ego that eclipsed his actual field credentials, a loud voice that dominated every single conversation he entered, a self-appointed belief that he was better trained, better educated, and better qualified than anyone else in any room. He'd completed basic reconnaissance course 3 years ago and never stopped reminding people about it at every possible opportunity. He scanned the room with sharp, judgmental eyes, spotted her standing near the stage adjusting cables, and scoffed audibly enough for the front 2 rows to hear. "Who's the civilian standing in our training event?" She didn't reply. She adjusted a loose cable connection, tested the projector remote by clicking through blank slides, then returned quietly to her position against the wall. That irritated him deeply. He walked toward her with heavy boots, letting each step echo deliberately and loudly across the tile floor. Marines in the front row turned to watch the developing confrontation. Some sensed trouble brewing like a storm. "You're in the wrong room, sweetheart," he said, smirking. "This is Special Forces level material. You looking for the finance office? Maybe personnel?" She looked at him once, just once, expression completely unreadable, neutral, blank. No fear, no irritation, no emotion whatsoever. Nothing. "Can you even throw a punch? You look like you've never been in a fight," he added loudly, projecting his voice to earn a few nervous laughs from the crowd. Still, she said nothing. Her silence was gasoline on his already inflated ego. He turned to address the entire auditorium, raising his voice so everyone could hear clearly. "I'm Special Forces," he declared, flexing his shoulders dramatically. "I've completed advanced combat training at Quantico and Fort Benning. I can teach anyone in this room a thing or two, including Little Miss Silent over here." A few Marines chuckled uncomfortably. Others looked away. One grizzled sergeant in the 3rd row shook his head slowly, recognizing disaster approaching. The captain decided this wasn't enough. He wanted to humiliate her completely, publicly, memorably. He lifted his hand high, palm open, like he was going to slap her directly across the face in front of everyone. Someone in the crowd shouted urgently, "Sir, don't!" But he swung anyway, fast, arrogant, overconfident, certain she wouldn't react, certain she couldn't possibly react in time. She reacted. Before the captain's hand made it halfway to her face, she moved. A small movement, exact timing, economical motion with zero wasted energy. She caught his wrist with 2 fingers and a thumb, not grabbing, not clutching desperately, just precise contact at the exact pressure point where nerves cluster beneath skin. The entire room went silent instantly. Even he froze mid-swing, confused by how easily she stopped his momentum completely. His eyes widened. Then she rotated her hips slightly, applied minimal leverage against his elbow joint, twisted her torso counterclockwise with perfect mechanical advantage. Crack! The sound echoed through the auditorium like a gunshot fired indoors. Sharp, final, unmistakable, sickening. The captain fell to his knees instantly, screaming as his wrist bent at a direction no human wrist should ever bend naturally. Gasps filled the room like oxygen being sucked out by vacuum. Some Marines jumped to their feet in shock. Others backed away instinctively from the violence. One sergeant whispered urgently to another, "That wasn't just a break. That was precision. That was surgical. That was intentional control." She released him gently, almost respectfully, letting his arm drop carefully into his lap without additional damage. She didn't posture over him. She didn't shout triumphantly. She didn't celebrate her victory. She simply stepped back 2 measured paces with her hands relaxed completely at her sides, breathing steady and controlled, face absolutely calm. The captain, sweating profusely and pale as death, tried to stand but collapsed again immediately. His legs wouldn't support him. His body was shutting down from shock. What are you?" he gasped through gritted teeth, saliva dripping from his mouth. For the first time since entering the auditorium that morning, she spoke. Quiet, steady, emotionless, each word delivered with absolute clarity and purpose. "Someone you should have respected from the beginning." Marines looked at each other, stunned into complete silence. The auditorium felt like it was holding its collective breath. Nobody moved. Nobody coughed. She walked calmly to the stage, plugged in the projector properly, adjusted the screen angle for optimal viewing, and began preparing her presentation materials like absolutely nothing unusual had happened. The captain whimpered pathetically on the floor, while medics ran in frantically from the hallway with equipment. Marines murmured in low, urgent, confused tones. "Who is she? What unit is she from? Did you see how fast she moved? I didn't even see her move. That technique, I've never seen anything like that in 15 years. She broke his wrist with 2 fingers. Then the battalion commander walked in through the side entrance, saw the broken captain being treated by medics, saw her standing calmly on stage organizing slides, and instantly straightened his entire posture. "Ma'am," he said loudly, saluting her sharply with textbook precision. The room erupted in shocked whispers that rolled like thunder. The commander's tone carried something rare in military settings, genuine fear and profound respect. He held his salute rigidly until she nodded once in acknowledgement. Only then did he drop it. When arrogance meets real skill, the truth is undeniable. For more powerful reversals, subscribe to Steelheart Stories. The commander helped her onto the center stage, then turned to address the Marines with authority. His voice was firm, commanding, but carried an unmistakable edge of reverence. "You all need to know exactly who you just watched move." The medics carried the captain out on a stretcher, his face twisted in agony and humiliation. No one laughed anymore. No one whispered jokes. No one smirked. The battalion commander clicked to the first slide of her presentation displayed on the massive screen. Advanced Close Quarters Instructor. Tier 1 Program. The room gasped collectively, the sound like wind through trees. "She," he continued slowly, deliberately, "is the reason half of your CQB techniques exist in your training manuals today." Whispering swept across the crowd like a wave crashing violently on shore. "She wrote the breaching entry manual you studied in School of Infantry. She trained DevGru's hand-to-hand combat instructors at Damneck. She designed the pressure point control program currently used by MARSOC. She developed the threat assessment protocols for Force Recon. She's Tier 1? Above Tier 1. Way above." She waited patiently at the wooden podium for the noise to settle completely into silence. Then she stepped forward deliberately and said, "I'm here to evaluate your reactions under pressure and stress in real-time scenarios." Several Marines stiffened immediately, suddenly self-conscious about every single movement they'd made since entering. She analyzed them calmly, methodically, like a surgeon examining tissue. "Most of you stayed seated when you witnessed potential violence developing in front of you. Some of you laughed when verbal aggression was directed at someone you perceived as weaker. A few of you tried to intervene verbally, but took no physical action whatsoever." She paused deliberately, letting the words sink deep into their consciousness. "Only 3 of you moved to physically protect someone you thought was weaker than the aggressor. Her eyes scanned the room slowly, deliberately, and Marine straightened involuntarily under her penetrating gaze. Strength, she said, is not the ability to strike first or strike hardest. It is the discipline not to strike at all. A respectful hush settled over the auditorium like morning fog. She explained systematically how misjudging opponents get soldiers killed in urban combat zones, how ego blinds situational awareness during high-stress missions, how silence is often the biggest warning sign on a real battlefield where enemies wait, how assumptions about capability based on appearance lead to catastrophic tactical failures that cost lives. Every single Marine listened like she was reading their future, written in blood on parchment. She walked them through detailed scenarios. Ambushes in Fallujah, where quiet enemies were deadlier than loud ones. Hand-to-hand encounters in tight corridors where technique defeated raw strength. Moments where hesitation cost entire units their lives and quick judgment saved dozens. Situations where underestimating opponents led to friendly casualties. She showed video footage of training exercises where overconfident operators made fatal mistakes. She displayed statistics. How many combat deaths resulted from assumption versus preparation? She demonstrated techniques on a volunteer, moving so fast the room gasped again. After 30 minutes of surgical analysis and demonstration, someone finally asked the question everyone feared asking. "Ma'am, what's your actual position in the military structure?" She answered plainly, without pride, without hesitation, without embellishment. "I don't serve in the Corps. I train the people you call Special Forces." The room went absolutely still, silent, frozen. Even the veteran Marines who had served 3 combat deployments in Iraq and Afghanistan felt small in the presence of that truth. Gunnery sergeants who'd seen direct action in Fallujah sat straighter. Staff sergeants with Purple Hearts and Bronze Stars stared in genuine awe. She continued calmly. "I've trained Delta Force operators at Fort Bragg, SEAL Team 6 instructors at Dam Neck, Marine Raiders at Camp Lejeune, Air Force Pararescue at Kirtland." She let that information settle like dust. When they need to learn something new, something advanced, something that saves lives, they call me. She clicked to another slide showing her credentials. Master Instructor certifications in 17 martial arts disciplines. Combat deployments to classified locations. Thousands of operators trained. 0 training fatalities. She ended the briefing with a quiet, firm command. "Rise." All 400 Marines rose instantly in unison, chairs scraping loudly. She nodded once. It was the closest thing to approval any of them would ever receive from her. After the briefing concluded officially, Marines formed a long line. Not to ask for photos, not to flatter her, not to request autographs or handshakes, but to apologize sincerely, to thank her genuinely, to acknowledge her properly with respect. She didn't bask in the attention. She didn't smile for effect. She didn't pose. She simply nodded at each Marine personally, accepting their respect with humility and continued silence. One by one, they approached with heads slightly bowed. "Ma'am, I apologize for laughing. It was disrespectful." "Ma'am, thank you for the lesson. I'll remember it." "Ma'am, I should have moved faster to intervene." "Ma'am, I underestimated you. I'm sorry." She responded to each with a simple nod or a quiet understood or learn from it. No lengthy speeches, no dramatic forgiveness, just acknowledgement. The commander approached her privately near the stage exit, away from listening ears. "Ma'am, I'll handle disciplinary action against Captain Trent immediately. Court-martial proceedings, reduction in rank, dishonorable discharge." "No," she said softly but firmly, cutting him off. "He already learned the lesson he needed today." Her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't vengeful. It wasn't bitter. It was heavy with understanding. The kind that only comes from years of real combat experience, from watching young soldiers make fatal mistakes, from knowing that pain teaches more effectively than punishment ever could, from understanding that humiliation can reform better than imprisonment. She collected her materials carefully, unplugged the projector with practiced efficiency, and walked toward the exit with measured steps. Marines lined both sides of the corridor automatically, standing at rigid attention without being ordered. Not out of fear, not out of obligation, not out of regulation, out of pure earned honor. At the door leading to bright sunlight, a young private, barely 19, fresh from boot camp at Paris Island, whispered nervously, "Ma'am, how did you move so fast?" She paused mid-step, turned slightly, looked at him with eyes that had seen too much war, too much death, too much sacrifice. "Practice," she said simply. "Thousands of hours, every single day. No shortcuts, no excuses." Then she added quietly, "And respect for the art. Never use it for ego, only for protection." She walked into the bright California sunlight, disappearing like a shadow returning home to darkness. The young private stood straighter. He would remember that moment for the rest of his military career and beyond. They all would. For stories where true strength speaks through calm action, subscribe to Steel Heart Stories.